All right, everybody, it is 2 o'clock. So welcome to Small Business Phoenix Rising. Everybody sees my screen. Just nod your head if you can see it. Okay, great. So our crusade in doing the Small Business Phoenix Rising project is to provide small business owners the tools, insights, and mentoring needed to get through this tough time and back to being successful and profitable. And that's what we all want to do with our businesses, to get back to where it's normal. We're actually making money and things are exciting that way. Housekeeping, we've got kind of a smaller group here. So if you have a question, you have a comment, just go ahead and unmute your microphone. If I hear a lot of noise in the background, I can tell from, the way the system will show me where the noise is coming from. I'll mute you. I get the fact that maybe we have dogs and cats and so forth, but if it does get a little noisy, I'll just mute you there. Don't take it personally. It's not me mad at you, but three things we provide: tools, insights, and mentoring. And let's open up and let's talk about the Paycheck Protection Program. In fact, I'm going to call on John Stacy if that's okay. What's new with it, John? Are we out of money again?
Not yet, but not yet, but I suspect that'll happen pretty quickly. I think the ongoing news is the big banks, your Wells Fargo, Bank of America, those Chase continue to see issues with not getting any funding. And I've talked to a client today that had been with Wells Fargo, and they get the same communication. They send out mass communication about what's going on, but it's not specific to anything. So for those of you that got money, it really came down to the small banks did a whole heck of a lot better job in taking care of the small businesses.
Yeah, and that's been consistently through. We've seen that. That's also been Adam's experience and him applying, and everybody else that's commented on this. It's really been about the small banks. They've been the ones that have been able to perform. They get it done a lot quicker. And, the big banks, several people have mentioned that, when they've tried to go through a big bank, what happens invariably is you just get shifted to one person to the next, and there's no kind of accountability. So,
well, I think that also part of it, in a lot of the smaller banks, you might be used to dealing with the same commercial manager or whatever their title may be. But in a lot of the bigger banks, they're always moving people around. So you don't necessarily develop a long-term relationship with someone that can kind of help you out, run through whatever needs to get done. And without that help, again, it goes back to the small banks provide that and the big banks don't.
So when you have that relationship and you get a little bit closer, you usually are able to get your banker's address where they live. And when they know that where they live, they're more likely to perform, right?
Well, as long as you've got their email address, their cell number, it's all okay.
That's right. You blow them up. Not literally, but I mean, I guess maybe some of us get a little frustrated. That's probably what we want to do, but don't do that. Okay?
Don't do that.
Don't do that. Be nice. Okay.
Right, I was a little bit encouraged today because I had read an article about several restaurant chains that gave the money back to the PPP program. So, I mean, I've been known occasionally to have a Potbelly sandwich, and when I had seen that they had taken money, I had kind of reevaluated whether I'd do business with them afterwards. But I did see that they gave the money back, the $10 million that they'd gotten. So
there's a lot of that guilting going around, which is good. They be guilted into it, like the LA Lakers and Harvard took a lot of money. I don't know if they've given it back yet, but there's a lot of people that have taken money that probably shouldn't have.
A little money shame going on. I kind of like it.
Yeah, that's nice. It's not just the Me Too movement. It is shame them because they took money movement as well. Cool. All right. Any other updates? Anybody else want to share any experience with the PPP? Yes, Michelle.
Michelle does. She's on mute though.
Yeah, you can unmute yourself, Michelle.
Okay. So, initially we attempted to go through our bank, Wells Fargo, weren't really getting anywhere. And then I do my merchant services through Heartland Payment Systems.
Yeah.
And my rep called me and said, look, we have a lending arm to our company called Lendio. And we ended up going through them, which I thought the nice thing about that platform was it took our application and it submitted it across several different lenders all at one time.
Yeah.
And it was then a case of, okay, who's going to pick it up first? And so we have received our loan application number. We went ahead and sent our voided check, and now our status is that it's been funded and we're waiting for the money to hit the bank. So I thought that was, kind of a successful way, obviously, to go versus just cherry picking a bank here, a bank there, and trying to forge a last minute relationship with maybe someone more local and trying to start from scratch with them.
Yeah, definitely.
So we're waiting for the money, of course, until it's in hand. You can't really applaud it, but I think we're going to get there.
Good to hear. Awesome. Anybody else? Okay. If not, we're going to move on, and I probably no questions, but this has been our constant theme for the last 2-3 weeks, the last probably 3 meetings. It's time to communicate, and it's time to communicate with our customers and with the consumer. And I say that because the consumers out there, they're wondering who's in business, who's going to stay in business. I drive every day to my office on a very busy street, 1960. And I'm always looking around, and I'm just kind of curious who's going to be in business and who's not. And so it's really, really important to communicate. And so, as I mentioned last time we were on, we were going to talk more about email as we did last on Tuesday, just 2 days ago. So I'm just going to do a little bit of a refresh and talk about why email and why email is so powerful. One of the things that you get with email that it's very difficult to get with other things, and it's largely due to the cost, is that you can be extraordinarily consistent with email. I joke all the time, and it truly is a joke. I've never sent 5 emails to anybody, but when I do seminars, I joke about the fact that I've got everybody's contact information and I'm going to send them an email. And I tell them, I promise you, I will not send you more than 5 emails a day. That is my commitment to you, no more than 5 a day. Now, of course, it's a joke. People laugh in that type of a setting. But the point I'm making is that you can be extraordinarily consistent with email at a very reasonable cost. The cost to doing that, even with a big list, even if you were emailing somebody, once a week, once every 2 weeks, or maybe every other day, which is good for, say, like a restaurant or, depending on the industry. I will never email more than once a week unless I've got a product that I'm launching. But the point I'm making is that it's so good to use as a platform, consistent, to be consistent with it. And consistency leads to competency. It's very difficult to do that with direct mail. It's very difficult to do that with phone calls. It's difficult, and it's not even in the same category to do that on social media, because you can't control who gets on social media and seeing who you're to get them to see your message. But email's great to be consistent, and the more consistent we are, the more competent we are viewed. Okay, beats social media. I'm going to rag on social media, but let me just preface this. I do a ton of stuff on social media. I find a lot of customers on social media, but that is just in the lead generation. It's not good to use social media to reach out to your existing customers. McKinsey & Company, we talked about this last week, shows that in their study that email is 40 times more effective than Facebook and Twitter combined. The reason I point this out, the reason I spend a good amount of time bashing social media, even though I use it, is because it's perspective. Perspective from the standpoint that it is this shiny, bright object. If you've ever seen the movie Up, it's the squirrel. Squirrel, if you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. Doug the dog gets distracted. And as business owners, we're always getting bombarded with what is the greatest and the latest. Right now on Facebook, it's big time chatter about funnels. Oh, you got to get this going because you got to get a funnel. You got to get this. I mean, they end up rebranding what an actual marketing campaign is by calling it a funnel, thereby giving you the impression that this is like a whole new way of reaching out to people, and we've never done this before, and we've never been able to reach out to people in this way before, when the reality is all the strategies are all the same. So email, very effective. Okay. So today we're going to talk about effective email campaigns. Let me flip back there. And it's a picture of some very beautiful emails, and whether these are effective or not, I'm not sure. It's just a stock image that I pulled off. But when we talk about effective emails, let me do just a short little history lesson. Anybody know what we called advertising and marketing before we called it advertising and marketing, or branding, or positioning, or funnels? Anybody know? We're talking about going back into the early 1900s, late 1800s. In fact, if someone knows the answer, I've got a $25 gift card to their favorite restaurant. When we're actually able to go to a restaurant, I will give it to them. Anybody know? No takers?
Company name.
Company name? No. What did we call it? We actually called it something.
Selling.
Close. Salesmanship and
Sales.
print. Yeah. So before we even came up with the words of advertising, marketing, and when the printing press evolved and it became that, everybody, could get the printed copy, this is when advertising and marketing really started. But what we called it then was salesmanship and print. And what's interesting about that is because we're always trying to kind of evolve and come up with, better names and renaming things, is I think that is the best definition when it comes to when we advertise. Now, obviously, if we're doing a video, it's not in print, but it's all based in salesmanship. When we're communicating with our clients, we're trying to sell them, obviously. If we're not in there, not selling them something, then what's the point? But with that being said, let me go into why we don't make sales. And I'm going to ask permission to give you another analogy. Okay? You guys all right with that?
Yes.
Go ahead if you're okay. All right. All right. You've got an abscess, and you got to go to the dentist. You got to get it taken care of, and it's going to be a root canal. So you head into the dentist, and sure enough, he tells you you're going to have a tooth extraction and do root canal and all this other stuff. And you say, hey, that's great because I'm in a lot of pain. But he gives you a little caveat, and he says, but before I start and before I do that and I remove that tooth and I do the root canal, actually, you don't remove the tooth if you're doing the root canal, but if he's going to come in and do the root canal, he tells you, before I do that, I'm going to have to remove your left hand. Now, I'm being completely facetious with this, but this is the point to that. If a dentist ever said anything like that or anything sort of like that, you'd say, no, thank you. I'm not interested. I'm not going to do that, because the reality is, as much pain as this is causing me in my mouth and in my head, I would rather live with this than lose my left hand. The point I'm making is that, and you actually kind of see this, and I'm not trying to get political, but Trump has actually said this, especially with COVID-19, that the cure can't be worse than the disease. And in selling, it's exactly the same thing. Most of the time, most of us lose the sale because the solution that we're offering is more painful than the problem itself. Does that make sense? We have to minimize the problem with our solution. The solution can't exceed the pain threshold point that the problem itself creates. The reason I say that, and I set that up, and this is the reason why consumers don't buy. We all want to go to the dentist and have a good experience. The reason I say this and I point this out is because more often than not, we lose sales because we just won't shut up. After the sale's made, go to it, process the sale. It's the same thing with email. Once we've made the sale, once we've used that tool, we no longer need to keep selling the consumer on the product. And I'm going to show you in email form what is good and what is the best way to do that. So jumping into emails, case study. First case study, this is the email that you've all seen. I send out an email once a day for Small Business Phoenix Rising. And this is one of the emails in its entire length. Now, I'm going to split it in half so you can actually see it here in a second. But first of all, I'm going to start with subject line. Subject lines in every email are important. You want people to open up the email. But what I will tell you that trumps the subject line and even the content in your email is consistency. In fact, on Tuesday, Stephen even mentioned from a personal experience that there are certain emails, I believe one was a jewelry store where his wife is subscribed. He sees the email coming in. He knows that every Monday, I think is what he said, at this time, that email's coming. And it's consistent. So it almost doesn't even matter what the subject line is, which is interesting because there's a lot of emphasis that most marketing people make on talk about that the subject line is everything. Well, it's part of the equation, but consistency does trump. Okay. Email rocks today's YouTube recording of our Zoom meeting for small business. The rest of the information is pretty straightforward. It's coming from me, and then if someone replies, that's the email, okay? That's just straight off of Constant Contact, okay? So here's the email, split, broken up. So when you look at this, is everybody able to see my mouse when I'm like scrolling here, going back and forth? Okay, so the email starts here, and it continues down to all the way down here, and you can see Constant Contact. You can see unsubscribed, you know, the standard things that you have, okay? The thing to remember with email is to keep it clean, keep it in small chunks, and have good visuals. Those are the three things that we're stressing here. So it's clean. We got a simple logo. We've got content here. We've got a couple of good visuals. Here's that same image in the form of a video. There's 2 videos on this email. So once again, this is a little confusing. This is the email here, but we can't really dissect it because the content, the words are too small. So I've broken it up into this 2-piece right here. All right. Your first initial piece of content, hello, great meeting today, blah, blah, blah. It's 2 sentences, 3 sentences at the most. Then you've got the video. And then what you'll notice is that you've got headers here. Knowledge is power. Next Zoom meeting details, back to business. Most of us, when we look at an email, we don't go through the whole email and read the whole thing. So bite-sized chunks that are digestible is preferable with breaking it up so somebody can at least scan through it. They may not read the whole entire email, but if I can get them to read this part where it says knowledge is power, then I've got them hooked. Most likely, they're going to go ahead and they're going to subscribe. So in the process of sending out these emails with what we're doing with Small Business Phoenix Rising, even with a tremendous amount of competition out there, because there is with Zoom meetings. I mean, everybody's doing a Zoom meeting today. You could book your whole life from like 9 in the morning till 9 o'clock at night with back to back Zoom meetings, right, Lori? I say Lori because I know she's doing a lot of Zoom meetings. That definitely can happen. But despite that, with an email list of about, I don't know, probably about 3,000 on average, I would think. My list has kind of grown a little bit. We've been able to commit well over 100 people to coming to the Zoom meeting. Not that all 100 people show up all at the same time, but this, in my opinion, this is very effective because there's more competition for somebody that's going to help you with your small business, give you advice on a Zoom meeting than there's ever been, okay? Next piece is the details to the Zoom meeting and then back to business. And if I can get either of these videos being clicked, it's very successful, okay? Any questions? And I'm kind of going through this kind of fast, but if you have a question, just interrupt me. It's not meant to be a lecture, which is kind of what it's turning out to be. If you've got an observation, you got a question, please fire away.
Are we gonna have some feedback time later?
Yeah.
At the end?
Yeah,
Okay.
but if you have a question as we go through this, our group's small enough. If we had 20, 30 people, go ahead, Michelle.
It's not really a question. I mean, you mentioned Zoom meetings out the wazoo. So I attended one the other day talking about aspects of marketing. And this was related to materials that some of my distributors provide me. But I came across a resource that's free. It's called subjectline.com. You can actually put your subject line that you're thinking of in it, and it'll kind of rank it.
Yeah.
And this is based on what's kind of popular today, with COVID related issues going on, what
Right.
seems to be picking up people's attention. So I thought it was just kind of cool because it's free.
Yeah. In fact, I've never heard of it, but that's a great tool. I'll take a look at it and use it myself. And there's great tools, especially with emails, because they can do all sorts of analytics. And thank you for bringing that up. There's actually a list of the top 100 headlines of all time. And it's interesting because it's really, if you read through those headlines, it's like going back in the Wayback Machine, because you start reading about Electrolux vacuum cleaner, you start reading about Tide back in the day when they had all these, campaigns. And so, but they've done studies over the years of what works and has worked really well. Some of those headlines aren't relevant, but what Michelle's saying is very applicable, because if you can take your headline and you can put it in there, and it can tell you and give you some tips on how to make that a little bit better as far as getting the consumer to open. Definitely, that definitely helps. Any other questions? Any other thoughts? Go ahead, John.
So Andy, this seems like a long email, like much longer than I would even do for a kind of a marketing kind of thing. So
yeah,
I keep them pretty short and sweet.
Yeah.
With an intro, what we can do to help their business, and a call to action, and that's about it. So
okay. Yeah, and so good point. It's simpler, the smaller you can make it, the better. But the thing I will tell you is that you can, and I can give you other examples. I don't have them here today, but I can give you examples of emails that are probably 3 times the size of mine, that are extraordinarily effective. Now, they've got a lot of pictures and they also have a lot of text in there, but it's more of a matter of breaking things up into small digestible bites. Does that make sense?
Sure.
All of us have taken a bite of a steak, too big of a bite of a piece of steak, and it's kind of hard to swallow, and we kind of keep chewing, and sometimes we kind of swallow it and then realize, no, I didn't really chew it up enough, and then we bring it back up and we say, okay. When I get hungry,
it's the old elephant joke, right? How do you eat an elephant, right?
One bite at a time.
Yeah.
But as long as you break your emails up into small bite portions, and what I'm talking about is headings.
Yeah, I like
people
that
can
idea.
scan through. You can overview it, and a lot of content isn't necessarily a bad thing. And the reason why is because if someone's truly interested in your product, especially if it verges on being a high dollar item, as well as how important the decision is that you have to make. Meaning, I'm not talking about purchasing the mat that sits in front of your front door. That's not really that important, and it's not even all that expensive. But if you're thinking about where you're going to stick your mother in as far as a retirement home, or you're thinking about buying a $40,000 car, lots of content is really a good thing, because consumers will read it, despite what a lot of people say that no, they don't have attention span. Well, we have attention spans for the things that we're really interested in. The things that we're not interested in, we don't have the attention span for. So when we break things up into small pieces, what we're allowing the consumer to do is to go through it in a very quick, efficient manner and see if there really is anything of interest to them. So we're actually doing them a pretty good service when we structure things in that format. Okay. Any other questions? Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I have a quick question here, because things that I've been trying to post more on LinkedIn lately, and it's not all about, hey, I sell office supplies, look at what I've got on special this week. Some of it's about sending some more helpful content, like here are 5 fun desk exercises you can do while you're sitting at your home office desk, things like that, fun things.
Right.
And so should we keep content that we're sending out through constant contact email directly, have a mixture of, salesy based pieces versus fluff things like I just mentioned?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, let's get some examples. Let's not just rely on everything that I'm saying here, but definitely you mix it up, because people like the funny stuff. They like the interesting stuff. And not every single email needs to be going out to necessarily sell them on the product. Not necessarily every email always has to have a call to action. It should have something that says something good about your business. And you definitely don't, at least in this day and age, you don't want to say, buy now, please buy now, please buy now. You want to stay away from that. But John, Stacy, you've got good ideas. What do you like to do as far as a mix when you send out marketing messages through email?
Well, I frankly haven't been doing a lot of email, but like Michelle, I've been doing a lot of posting. And so I've really put together a schedule of some things that I do on a daily basis through the month. So, for example, on Wednesdays, I send out just some kind of funny joke or something along those lines. I do something similar on Friday. So I'm doing some funny things a couple days a week. I've been sending some stuff out on military and veterans on Saturday. On one day a week, I'm doing some things on planning. So it really comes down to I try to do some things consistently, because we've talked about consistency, but doing something that's kind of the same thing on a daily basis. So I don't do a whole lot of salesy stuff. Now there are some things, and I'm doing a lot of videos, so there's definitely some things in there that I do related to personal development and talk about that. And generally at the end of the video, I said, hey, if you need any help, go ahead and contact me, but it's not particularly salesy. And then, not everybody watches a video through the end. So one, consistency, have some funny things, some different things, so that you're really not doing everything that's salesy.
Yeah. If you see my screen right here, I've pulled up a calendar, and these are what are referred to as alternative holidays. Not really holidays, but every day of the year at least has one or two of these, whether it's January 9th, Word Nerd Day. Yeah. Static Electricity Day. There's like a Chocolate Lovers Day. Talk Like a Pirate Day. There's Drive an Ugly Truck Day. It's a guy thing. I mean, we talked a little bit about this on Tuesday, but there's you can go through this, and this is fun stuff. And with a lot of us that actually have physical locations, this is something that you can do where you can actually draw people into your place of business. Because if you have Chocolate Lovers Day, right, you can actually have these chocolate bars that are manufactured that you have your logo on, and you can invite, the first 10 people that come by our office will get a chocolate bar. And you're forcing a touch that way of them actually coming in. You're not trying to sell them anything. Insurance companies, that's a great thing for insurance companies to do. Yeah, Adam Cook, have something that you set something up to where you can engage. I know Lori actually sends out brownies, part of send out cards. Very similar, a little bit more pricey when you send out the cards, but the impact is huge when you get this card, and consistency is definitely key. But these are all great things. So I really recommend, if you just Google alternative holiday calendar, you'll come up with the same thing that I have here on my screen. But it's just amazing what you can do. Toothache Day, Bagel and Lox Day, Bagel and Lox, anything that's food is just awesome, especially if you got a place where people can show up and say, hey, it's Bagel and Lox Day, come on by. We've got all that you can eat type thing. So, yep. All right. Any other thoughts? Anybody have anything they want to share, what they've done that they've thought's been pretty good? Okay, great. Okay, case study 2 is what we'll move on to here. All right, this is Cook Insurance. So Adam Cook, you wave. He gave me permission. We've been working on some emails for him, and this is one of the emails that we have done for him. So same thing. You see a very clean, very simple look. You see some images. And the first thing is subject line. Now, with Constant Contact and with MailChimp, Aweber, or iContact, they all have the same thing. You not only can do a subject, but you can actually do a pre-header. Depending on what type of a campaign, we may do a pre-header, we may not. But I don't know how much of impact they really make. I mean, at one point or another, the consumer's going to get in there and they're going to open up the email and they're going to be interested or not. So, but you can put in pre-header, this one, a comprehensive insurance plan, including commercial auto insurance, will leave nothing to chance. So with this particular email, this is all about having large equipment insured, bulldozers, front loaders, trucks. Adam does a lot of marketing to a lot of construction companies, land development companies would be good for this because they've got all the dozers that are pushing all the dirt and what have you. Okay, so logo, your headline, then you kind of got a bit of a sub one, and then you've got basically 6 sentences here, 2 paragraphs, 6 sentences. Now, what's a little bit different about this is there's no heading on his call to action. And the reason why is because we put a line. Once again, make the pieces look like they're easy, digestible pieces, all right? Because if I can go in there and I can look at the email and I can see, okay, there's a little bit of content right here. I'm going to read that, and then, okay, there's that. This is his call to action. He's just talking about how he's basically an expert in what he does, how they can help you. It's not salesy. It's not saying book an appointment today. A lot of times with email, that's probably not the best thing. Most of what Adam will do when he gets with his clients is either meet with them face-to-face or over on the phone and do a fair amount of asking questions and doing intakes. You can do a call to action for an appointment if you want, but generally speaking, more effective emails is where we're getting into disseminating information, particularly with insurance. Okay. Any questions, any thoughts on this? You'll notice that it's a little bit more defined in terms of we have the Cook Insurance Group inverted here. It's just a really super good, at least I think, clean look.
Andy?
Yes.
Andrew Sykes.
Yes.
This particular email reminds me of something that almost comes to a pet peeve for me. All the content is in a frame or in various frames. I'm somewhat have difficulty reading. We'll zoom into emails at least 3 times, maybe times 4. And when I do that, the frame moves off the page. The text does not wrap. Now I'm scrolling back and forth trying to read the dang thing.
Yeah, well,
just a thought.
No, and that's a good point. That's an excellent point. All emails like Gmail or Outlook will allow you to convert an email into just straight HTML. And that's maybe what you want to do. So it's just the text. And then you don't have those responsiveness issues. And that's what he's talking about as we expand, contract. You see it on websites often when a website isn't quite built correctly. When it expands, it contracts, the menu messes up, and all sorts of issues potentially can take place. But yeah, that's a good point. But
I appreciate in my case, it's an operator issue,
yeah.
But my clients are not expected to be expert operators.
Right. Yeah.
I expect to get it to them easy in the first place.
Right. So definitely.
But it's a valid point.
Yeah, it is. And consider your audience. If your audience is fairly sophisticated when it comes to this stuff, and I would say, Michelle, your audience is pretty sophisticated because they're all business owners. You're B2B. You know, they're going to understand this. But if you're an insurance guy that is selling final expense, that's what it is, right? Where you're buying insurance for your funeral expenses, and the people that are buying that are 60, 70 years old. You know, maybe you want to just make a straight HTML. All email platforms, not only was I saying about the email platform or the like Gmail or Outlook allows you to convert things to HTML, you can actually build emails that are straight HTML too. Some people do prefer that. Some people don't want the images, but it's difficult to break things up because once you go straight to HTML, you're not going to have sections as easily. So. Okay, any other questions, any other thoughts? Okay. So these are the three things: clean, images and visual for most industries are going to work pretty well. And then small content chunks, make it digestible. Once again, when I go back up here, the problem is you go into the dentist and he tells you, I got to cut off your left hand. You know, I'm facetious. No dentist is ever going to say that, but it illustrates the point. If we make it too difficult on the consumer doesn't tell us that they're not going to buy. They just walk away and nothing happens. Most sales end, no sales end with the consumer never even telling us why they didn't buy. And usually, more often than not, if price isn't a concern and if it wasn't ultimately not a good fit, it's because we probably overwhelmed them. So it's easy to do with emails. Keep it simple, keep it clean, and keep those chunks small. So we're pretty much going to wrap things up. If there's any other questions, we try to keep this between 30 and 45 minutes. But anybody else have any other thoughts, any other questions? Craig, I think you're talking, but we can't hear you.
Technical difficulties.
No,
I
you're okay.
put a link to alternative calendar days in the chat because I was looking
thank you.
for it. So
good job. Yeah, those are great. Alternative calendar days are fun. You can do fun stuff. You don't even necessarily, if you don't have a physical location, when I talked about the whole food concept of bringing somebody in, like Lori, you don't have a location, but what do you have that you can use once a month?
Well, of course, I do a weekly newsletter also. And then just today, I sent some cards out for Cinco de Mayo.
Right.
Create a little card.
But if you wanted to use one of those alternative calendar days and you wanted to have interaction with your customers and with the consumer, where could you bring them? Where could you bring them? We were talking about it last night. Where could they go?
But to find out what those alternative days were?
No, you do Chocolate Lovers Day.
Oh, the Chocolate Lovers Day. Where would they go?
Yeah. Where could you set up temporarily for a couple hours?
Probably, well,
a meeting room.
When we were able to get out, then I'm in the Woodlands Chamber of Commerce, and so I have access to their conference rooms, and so I set up in there.
Yeah. You can set up
I just sent out some brownies today, as a matter of fact. So
well, you send stuff out, but if you want to have face-to-face interaction with them, even though you don't have a physical location, you can find one. That's what I'm saying.
Absolutely.
Any chamber will, for the most part, allow you to use the room. So anyway.
Sure, and there's also the Cubic office park. Out there. I go out there from time to time, and I'll do meetings out. I'll have meetings out there also. Yes.
Great. Thanks, guys. If there's not anything else,
Andy, I do have one other comment for you.
Yes, please.
I probably get 10,000 emails that I don't click on and respond to. I don't know where you got my address, but I think it's probably a high compliment for me that you're the 1 in 10,000 that I followed up on.
Well, thank you.
The rest of them are in the trash.
What a great way to end the meeting. So I'm just going to go ahead and drop the mic right now, and we'll end it. Thank you.